Folks, we all have unresolved emotion, right? That's kind of the journey, is to help one another release this stuff so that we can be more whole and complete and have a greater experience of connection with one another. And when we're triggered, by definition, we are in a state of distrust. Why do I say for us as individuals first? Because if we're not charging our own battery and taking care of ourselves, we can't really show up for other people. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. And today we're talking about plagues of the heart, the impact of unresolved emotions on relationships. And this is a continuation in the series on wrath and ruin, Old Testament tactics for basically destroying your marriage. And why Old Testament? Because these are issues that have been around for literally thousands of years. They've been passed on generationally. And it is the tradition of this series that we start with a story. Everybody likes a good story. And you may be familiar with the series. We have our protagonists, Jack and Emily. The names have been changed to protect the innocent, just to be clear, and any resemblance to real life or fiction is completely accidental. And so let us go to a small town with winding roads and blooming gardens. That's where Jack and Emily live. They have faced many challenges throughout their relationship, and if you've been listening to these episodes, you know there have been quite a few. But they've always been able to learn and grow together. That's the sign of a resilient relationship. Now they're confronted with a new test, maybe the penultimate test. Jack had unresolved emotions from his past that he had not yet addressed, causing him to withdraw emotionally from Emily, sometimes to be a little reactive. And on the other hand, Emily was very codependent. She wanted to help him. She wanted validation from helping him. She was always trying to help him, but at the same time, somehow manipulating him through this unresolved trauma. Emily had been using Jack's unresolved emotional issues as a way to manage him, she thought, control him, is what he thought, knowing that he would do anything to avoid triggering his painful past, and often she would do anything to help him not trigger that painful past. She would often use his unresolved emotional trauma as leverage to get what she wanted in their relationship, causing Jack to feel trapped and helpless. And in some situations, she would protect his unresolved trauma. So this were a victim triangle, she would have played several roles in it. One day, Emily had reached her breaking point. She had been feeling neglected and unloved for months, and her attempts to communicate her feelings to Jack had fallen on deaf ears. She had grown tired of feeling like she was the only one putting in effort to save the relationship, and she felt that she was at the end of her rope. That's right, folks. The final straw came when Jack forgot their anniversary. Emily had been looking forward to celebrating their special day together, but when Jack didn't even acknowledge it, Emily was devastated. She had hoped that this would be the wake-up call that Jack needed to start putting more effort into their relationship. But when he continued to withdraw emotionally, she knew something needed to change. Yeah, that's right. He didn't even try and celebrate it. Instead, he fought with her about it. That's when she decided to serve Jack with divorce papers. She couldn't continue living in a marriage where she felt neglected and unloved, and she knew that she needed to take drastic action to get Jack's attention. And we're going to spare you how serving Jack with divorce papers was actually a manipulation in itself. The point is that Jack finally had his wake-up call. And rather than lose Emily, he discovered the Unbreakable Husband program, which promised to help him release his old hurts, unresolved emotions, and limiting beliefs through trigger hacking. Trigger hacking, also known as mental and emotional release, was a way that Jack was able to identify the root causes of his emotional withdrawal and work through them. He actually allowed his unconscious mind to do this work. It was really pretty simple. It didn't require deep, intense emotional exploration. His unconscious mind was able to recognize the unresolved feeling, take the lesson from the situations, and release the unresolved emotion. And in the case of trauma, it went from being bright, scary, turbulent emotion to being flat and manageable. He learned through this process how to communicate with Emily more effectively and show her the love and attention she needed without feeling trapped and controlled. As he continued to work through his issues, he began to feel more confident and empowered as a husband. He was no longer controlled by his unresolved emotions, and he could communicate with Emily from a place of strength and understanding, taking the lead in his marriage and his relationship with Emily. To Jack's amazement, the changes he made through the Unbreakable Husband program had a profound impact on his marriage. Emily noticed how much more engaged and attentive he was. It was actually a little scary for her, and she began to see him in a new light, but she welcomed it because he was attentive in a way that was caring and loving, as opposed to the kind of porcupine-like spikiness he'd had in the past. They spent more and more time together, and their relationship healed. And finally, after months of hard work, Jack had won Emily back. She dropped those papers. They renewed their vows and committed to a new chapter in their relationship, free from the control of unresolved emotional issues. Jack knew that he still had to do work on himself, and actually so did Emily. Emily realized through Jack's leadership that there was a lot of work she needed to do as well, that she had a part in that dynamic that he had stepped out of. He was confident that with the tools that he gained in the Unbreakable Husband program, he would continue to grow and strengthen his relationship with Emily. So their journey was a testament to the power of personal growth and the importance of seeking help. Let's talk about what can we learn from this story. Now, some of you may have heard this story and gone, that is absolutely surreal, but actually it's more real than you might imagine. Working with couples, I see this dynamic, both sides of it all the time. And let's talk a little bit about the victim triangle that I referenced there. So basically, the victim triangle is where one person feels like a victim, the other one is showing up as the abuser, and then the third piece is someone is a rescuer. And so Emily's codependence showed up as sometimes being a rescuer. She would protect Jack from other people so that he wouldn't have to touch that trauma. So she's rescuing him from his trauma. But the problem with the rescuer is they have an investment in maintaining that status so that they can always be what? The rescuer. They love the rescuer role. So they need to have that person in the victim role in order to do that. And sometimes Emily felt like the victim. She was the victim when Jack's unresolved emotion exploded. She was the victim, the recipient of it. And sometimes she was also the abuser. She would sometimes be critical of him. And he experienced being served with divorce papers as abusive before he got his aha, come to Jesus, wake up call. Now, Jack also had played all three of those roles, and we don't need to go into great detail, but the point is that when you're in that triangle, there is, if you're in any of those roles, you are maintaining a relationship founded on the idea that someone's on top in some way, shape, or form. Someone's better than. And the only way to break that pattern is to step out of it. And we can only step out of it by doing what? Doing what Jack did, releasing unresolved emotion. And in order to do that, we need to first understand, like Jack did, how unresolved emotional issues can drive unhealthy behavior for us as individuals first, and then as it flows out into our relationships. And why do I say for us as individuals first? Because if we're not charging our own battery and taking care of ourselves, we can't really show up for other people. Another problem with unresolved emotion can be that we might project something on other people. Jack often saw other people as the source of his trauma. When he was triggered and that trauma came back to life for him, he often saw other people as being the person who traumatized him as a child. Now, those situations may not have matched up perfectly, but the truth is, once we're triggered, once we're in that emotional space, we could see Mother Teresa as being Adolf Hitler in those moments. So the problem with unresolved emotion is it's like wearing, I'm trying to see if I have any rose-colored glasses, and I don't seem to have any handy. Oh, I failed. But it's like wearing rose-colored glasses, so everything we see is rose-colored. And the impact on communication is that when we're communicating from this space of the unresolved emotion, all of our communications are colored by that, the emotion that we have, that's the hurt that we haven't healed yet. It's almost impossible to get to real feelings underneath the larger feelings. And how do you know if you have unresolved emotion? Well, folks, we all have unresolved emotion, right? That's kind of the journey, is to help one another release this stuff so that we can be more whole and complete and have a greater experience of connection with one another and with the universe or God or whatever you call that wider experience, right? The part of the mission is to have that sense of connection, and it's unresolved emotion that gets in the way of connection, which is why we're talking about it. We're here at Rich in Relationship. We want you to have relationships that are rich in connection.
We know about marriages with children here at Rich in Relationship is inevitably we slip into parallel lives or roommate mode because we're like managing the crew, managing those kids. Well, we've got a solution for you. We've got a special free book for you that's going to give you 7 tips on how to reignite intimacy and passion in your relationship and get back on the same page. And it's easy to get. It's free. Go to bit.ly/7savers, the number 7 and the word savers all together, no spaces, bit.ly/7savers.
Unresolved emotions, by definition, are built up emotions of hurt, frustration, sadness, maybe fear, negative emotions, negative in the sense that we don't want to be hanging out in them too much if we can help it. And we know that we have them when somebody says something and we go from 0 to 60. Somebody might say something that I'll go to one very common for men. A man's driving down the road and somebody cuts them off. We can have a lot of different reactions to that. If the reaction is, I can't believe they cut me off, I got to go tell them or get them or honk at them or flash my lights at them or give them a symbol of some kind, that's probably a 0 to 60 reaction. Instead of a 0 to 10 reaction would be, wow, that was scary. I bet you they're in a hurry, or something, or maybe they didn't see me, right? That's a 0 to 10 reaction. So when we have those 0 to 60 reactions in our relationships, it can be really damaging in our relationship. And it's an indicator that there's something wrong within us. Yeah, the other person may do something wrong. When the person cut us off, it was scary, it was close, it was dangerous, but we were paying attention and it was okay. And the same thing happens in our marriages, in our relationships. Sometimes we are a little sarcastic or biting to the other person, maybe for reasons of our own. It may have nothing to do with them. And how they receive it has a lot to do with whether they've resolved their own emotional trauma or not. Sometimes we're sarcastic and biting because we have emotional triggers of our own. It goes back to those rose-colored glasses. So how does this impact our sense of intimacy, right? When we get into a committed relationship, like Jack and Emily, they got into that marriage because they wanted to be closer to one another. They didn't want to be playing this game of, Jack might explode at any time, or, let me see if I can make Jack explode, or let me protect Jack, or in Jack's case, Emily's such a disaster. She's always pissing me off. Thank God I have her though, because she's keeping me safe from these other people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is that when we're in that space of constant a fight, flight, or play dead, when we're triggered, it's almost impossible to be intimate. I got a puppy chewing on a bone at my feet here. Excuse the noise. Why? Because intimacy is based on trust, caring communication, and emotional connection or empathy. And when we're triggered, by definition, we are in a state of distrust. We're triggered, we're feeling scared, angry, hurt, sad, into the extreme, beyond what the situation calls for, in an unwarranted or inappropriate way. And there's no possibility for trust, or trust is a very slim reed in those circumstances. And there's almost no empathy because we're in our own stuff. So it's very hard to connect to the other person. And our communications tend to be less than caring, let's call it. How do we get through this? I think the first thing is we need to be mindful or be in a state of self-reflection. We need to be looking at our reactions, and I know we're in a society where we're not supposed to judge, but we need to judge for ourselves. Is our reaction appropriate? Is our reaction warranted? Do the circumstances demand? It's not the reaction itself, it's the intensity of the reaction. Or maybe the feedback we're getting from our loved ones is that we're overreactive. Maybe we need to hear them. Sometimes we can't really judge because we're so defending ourselves from ourselves, defending that hurt. It's like having a wound that's been that's not completely healed, but has a lot of very tough skin around it. And so we maybe are not as in touch with it as we could be, but the people who really love us see it and recognize it. Basically, that's what Emily did. She said, Jack, even I can't deal with this anymore. You got to do something about that or I'm out of here, right? That's basically, when she served him with papers, that's basically what she was saying. She's saying, I can't even deal with this anymore. And I have been, your best ally and in some ways your greatest rescuer, but not necessarily a positive. When we see this pattern, we have a duty to resolve it. Why? Well, number one, at the very least, we want to show love and concern for ourselves. If we discover that we have a splinter, even if it's a giant one, we don't want to walk around with it endlessly. We need to heal it. Now, if you find out that you have a heart condition, you go get that heart condition taken care of. If you have an emotional condition, get that taken care of. And actually, studies by Dr. Sarno and other doctors show that sometimes an unresolved emotional hurt can manifest as a physical illness. So instead of waiting to respond to a physical illness, why not deal with the emotional problem? And the way to do this is inevitably to get some form of outside help, preferably with someone who understands your particular kind of hurt, fear, sadness, anger, frustration, blame, whatever you're experiencing, and has a process, a tested process that will help your unconscious mind to heal itself. And I want you to know that your unconscious mind is, in fact, your friend. What happens is when we have unresolved hurt that's sabotaging our life, basically, which is what's happening for Jack. His unresolved hurt was sabotaging his life. We start to think of that as being the enemy. Our conscious mind wants a loving relationship that works. In Jack's case, he wants a loving relationship with Emily that works, but his overreaction is getting in the way. And his conscious mind is like, why can't I change? What's wrong with me? Why can't I fix this? And we start to think of ourselves as the enemy. But the fact is that our unconscious mind is our ally. Really what it is, it's an operating system that has a glitch in it, or maybe it's got a virus. And our unconscious mind wants to heal itself. It just needs a little help. It just needs a little antivirus software. And so in Jack's case, he went to our Unbreakable Husband program and got into our trigger hacking or mental and emotional release. The mental and emotional release is a system for helping educating the unconscious mind on how to heal itself, basically. And speaking from personal experience, when you've done, as a client, enough mental and emotional release processes, your unconscious mind actually starts to follow the process all on its own. Right? It learns very quickly. It wants to be whole. It wants to be complete. It wants to be connected. We are social beings. Now, let's just touch on the last piece here. Jack could have been really angry with Emily for serving him with papers. In fact, I have a lot of clients who are like, she served me with papers. I can never trust her again. And as they heal their own emotional trigger, they start to see the ways that their partner used that trigger for their own ends, let's call it. Not necessarily in a bad way, but for selfish ends instead of in the best interest of the person who has the trigger. Jack saw all this. And what did he choose? He realized that his family was what was most important, that he loved Emily, that he loves his children, that the time and cost of divorce would have been tremendous. And so he worked to win Emily back. And what happened after he won her back? Well, let's hold off on that. How did he win her back? First, he needed to clean up his side of the street. Then he needed to understand why she was the way she was and forgive her. That Emily's codependence, we were calling it, was a result of her own childhood, of her own growing up with someone who was triggered and broken, and that by understanding that, he could forgive her. He didn't have to make what she did right. He didn't have to justify what she did. He didn't have to set himself up to receive more of the same. But he could forgive her because it was not in his best interest to hold on to the hurt and the anger. And from that place of forgiveness, and from his love for her and his commitment to his family, he was able to have a relationship with her that worked. And Emily herself started to get help, right? And this is the way of partnership, is one person takes the lead and the other person follows. And it isn't always the same person who takes the lead, by the way. In this instance, it's Jack taking the lead. But who took the lead first? Emily did. She said, Jack, I'm done. I don't know what to do, so I'm ending it. And Jack said, I don't know what to do, but I can't have you go. I love you. And Jack went and got help. That's how this works. We take turns leading. We take turns healing. And we take turns helping one another. As always, you can reach out to me at rich@richinrelationship.com, or you can go to our website, richinrelationship.com, or you can direct message me. And I invite you to look at where are the places that you're overreacting, where are your triggers, and what are you going to do about them. And a way you can do this is you can just start keeping a quick journal. You can keep it on your phone, in a spreadsheet if you want, or in text messages to yourself. You can just say, oh, today somebody cut me off and I was triggered by that. And then, oh, today Emily asked me to take out the garbage and I got really angry and I don't know why. And then today the kids were knocking on the door while I was trying to work and I got overly frustrated and yelled at them and I'm not sure why. And eventually you'll accumulate enough evidence of what the nature of the trigger is so that you can start to identify where it might be coming from. And when you have that evidence, that's when you get to do the work. So I invite you to just start exploring, what is triggering you, and start to understand what are the triggers and what is your overreaction. You don't have to fix it. Just understand what it is first and invite your unconscious mind to show you, because it wants you to heal. And let me know how you do with this, right? This is a great exercise. I give it to my clients all the time. And usually the next step is we exercise the unresolved emotions, the emotional baggage, because there's 4 steps to driving change. And the first is to release emotional baggage. And the second is to create a strategy. And the third is to act on that strategy. And the fourth is to adjust our strategy to the unexpected. Thank you and have a great day.